In this video, we'll be implementing the endpoint to return all tasks in the database regardless of their completed status. The endpoint for this will be /tasks. So if we open Atom up, you can see the completed one that was done in our last video. So what I'm going to do is scroll to the bottom of that, and this next one would be else if, and the check for this. So when we're returning all of the tasks, we won't be supplying a task ID and we won't be supplying a completed status. It'll be empty. So the get should be empty. So what we need to do is scroll down. We need to check to see if it's empty. So there we go. So it's checking to see if that global variable is empty or not. What we need to do though as a final catch-all is provide an else and create a standard response to say the endpoint wasn't found. So if they do something like /tasks/abcd12345, that doesn't mean anything to the system. So it should just return a 404 error to say the endpoint wasn't found. So that's what we're going to implement here. However, if they were to supply a task ID or a completed status, then obviously it'll follow this logic here. But if they ever, send something completely random, then we need to handle that. So all we're going to do is set up an error response here. Just quickly. Set HTTP status code, and this is a 404 error. Set success false. Add message endpoint not found. And we just need to send it back and exit. Okay, so that's our catch-all done. Now if we scroll back up, we'll just collapse this so we can concentrate on returning all tasks. Now think about what we need to do here. So the root for this will be /tasks, and that's it. We're not passing any ID or completed status. However, the /tasks will also have a post request applicable to it. So post will be to be able to create a task, which we'll implement in one of the next lessons. So we need to check to see if it is get or post, or otherwise we need to say the request method is not allowed. So these are the only request methods that's allowed for /tasks. So the first thing we'll do is check that. So if server request method is get, or else if server request method post, and otherwise we need to say else and send a response. And this would be a 405. So if they send something like a delete to /tasks, we don't want to be able to delete all tasks. I mean, you could do that, but our requirements are that we don't want to be able to do that. You must delete one task at a time. So set that. Set success as false. we want to add a message. Request method not allowed. Send and exit. Okay, so now I've got that. So we'll implement the creation of a task later. So the placeholder's there ready, but we're going to focus on just returning all tasks regardless of any status or task ID. So we need to query the database. So you try and catch again. Oops. So catch PDO exception EX. And because we're returning tasks, we need to catch any task exceptions as well. And we'll set up the standard responses here. You'll be sick of setting these up shortly, but they've got to be done. New response. Status code to 500 error. Set success false. Response add message. And because it's a task exception, we can get the error message that we send out in the task exception. Send, oops, exit. Okay, I'll just copy that just to save a bit of time. I'll just quickly set, oops, I'll quickly set this to, so we'll set this to fail to get tasks. And we will error log database query error EX0. Okay, that should be fine. So I've set up the two exceptions, 500 errors, yeah. So back to the query. So query equals, this will be a read-only query now. Obviously the post, when we'll implement that later, that's obviously a creation, a write data, so we'll be using the write database on that one. But for this one, it is read DB and it is prepare. So all we're doing here is returning or selecting all rows regardless of any other data. So select ID, title, description, deadline, completed from TBL, tasks. Come back to deadline and we'll date format that. And the mask for that is, oops, I forgot to put these in quotes, single quotes, don't forget to do that. And this was %d / %m / %y %h :%i, and as deadline. Make sure you put the as deadline in. Okay, let's double check that. Deadline and complete from TBL tab. So this should select all rows in the database. We're not appending any parameters or anything like that. It is just a literal sort of all or nothing type of thing. So query execute, and we'll create our blank task array so we can store the tasks in it. Oops. And before we do the while, we will get the amount of rows returned again. So row count query row count. So now we've got that. We'll now iterate over all the rows. So row equals query fetch PDO fetch. Scroll down a bit. So we're going to, obviously for each row, we'll create the task. New task. So we'll just add in the parameters here from the returned rows. Okay, so that's created that, and then we need to append the task to the task array. Task return task as array. Okay. So that's for each row. Tries to create a new task. If it fails, gets caught by the task exception. So now we need to create the response data. So we'll set up the return data as a blank array, so we can append stuff to it. And then the first thing we need to do is set the return data rows returned, sorry, yeah, that's right. Row count. Return data, and this is where we need to set the tasks, or the list of tasks in here. And that was task array. And now we need to send our successful response. So we'll create a new response. Scroll down just so we can see where we are. So it's response. Set HTTP status code, and this should be 200. Set success flag to true, and then we need to, yeah, we can cache this as well. So to cache, set that to true. And then we'll add in the data, we'll set the data, so response, set data. And that was, no, that's not right. It was the return data, wasn't it? Yeah. And then send and exit. Let's clear that white space. So this should now, so we're not providing any query strings or values in the query. It's a GET request. We'll then try and create this white space. Try and create and run the query. We'll then return that, add it to that, send them the standard response. Some standard error responses here. Let's get rid of that white space, and we'll implement that post at a later stage. Yep, so if it's not get and it's not post, then we'll get our generic error message. Get rid of this white space. So that should be fine. So what we need to do now is go back in our htaccess file, and we need to create a new rewrite rule. And for this one, it should be just tasks. Actually, it's just tasks, isn't it? So and then that should map to controller task.php. So this is just /tasks, and that's it, and that should just map to task. Like I say, we're making sure that the query string is empty, so it doesn't contain completed or task ID. So the get all is just /tasks, so that should capture that route. So I'll save that. Now if I go to Postman, and this is obviously from our last test for the incomplete stuff, so if I close that, create a new request, localhost port 8888/v1/tasks, and then just send that. We get 5 returned, so status code 200, success is true, and we'll get 5 returned, and this is a list of all the tasks. So I've got them all here, so 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So if we go to our database, we've got 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So what we should have now is all of the tasks. So if we've created new ones in here and then we ran this query again, we should get, say, 6 returned or 7 returned, however many we create. So that actually looks like it's working. So if I try and run a delete on the same route, because we only should allow get and post, I should get an error message. Yep. So it gets a message, request method not allowed. So I'm not allowed to delete on the route /tasks. So that's it. So that's all of the tasks being returned all at once. Now, this is good. However, if you have, it might not be tasks that we're talking about. It might be products in a store. Now, you don't want to return all of them products all at once in one request, because, you might have tens of thousands of products, and that would mean that the query would take literally ages to return. And it'll be a lot of data, especially if you're using a mobile device, to then return over a mobile connection. Now, in the next video, what we'll be doing is implementing paging on the get all task. So you can say, well, for page 1, I want to return 20 at a time. So it would be the amount of tasks divided by 20. So that would mean you might have, if you've got 40 tasks, that would be 2 pages full of 20 tasks apiece. So we'll see you in the next video for that one.